is logged on and has GoToWebinar up and running, and sometimes it takes the program a couple minutes to get going. If you can hear me okay and see my screen, go ahead over to the right-hand side of the page to the GoToWebinar toolbar and let us know via the chat or question feature so you can hear us okay. Okay, good. Sounds like the audio is fine, and so are the visuals. Like I said, we'll give everyone just another minute or two, and then we'll get started. Okay, it looks like everyone is logged on and ready, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today for 3 key tips to use career fairs to find your next job. We've put together a great webinar for you today. Whether you are newly transitioning out of the military or you've been a part of the civilian labor force for many years, career fairs can be an intimidating prospect, but they don't need to be. There are tactics you can employ when attending a job fair, as well as preparation beforehand and follow-up after, that will familiarize you with how job fairs work, both from your own perspective as a job-seeking veteran, so you know what to do while you're there, and from the perspective of companies, so you can be sure to have the information about yourself that they need in order to select you for one of their positions. We at RecruitMilitary have been hosting job fairs for military veterans for 9 years. We've hosted over 650 events during this time, and we've distilled our experience into a bulleted list of tactics that should help you find a job at one of our career fairs and any other job fair in your area that you might attend. We do recommend that you attend as many career fairs as you can find. My name is Liz Wheeler. I'm the social media manager here at RecruitMilitary. Joining me today for this webinar is Mike Frankum, former Army captain and senior vice president of marketing here at RecruitMilitary. Mike has worked in the field of veteran hiring for 17 years and brings an incredible wealth of knowledge regarding how to make the most of your experience at a job fair. At the end of this webinar, we will be hosting a live question and answer session, so be sure to stick around for that. Also, we're excited to welcome to this webinar Bill Edmondson from First Command Financial Services. We're pioneering a new portion of our webinars today called the Job Spotlight feature. Today, Bill is going to present to you open positions at his company. He's going to tell you all about the particulars of the job, the application process, and what qualifies you for the position. He'll also talk about how your military experience fits into their company culture. If you have any technical difficulties during this webinar with the GoToWebinar program, please let me know. You can use the chat box attached to the toolbar on the right-hand side of the page. To access that, you just click the orange arrow. It will expand the toolbar. Scroll down to the bottom, and there should be a feature that allows you to chat or ask questions. You can contact me there. That's also where you'll be able to ask the questions at the end of the webinar. And if you have any comments or concerns during, feel free to let me know. To begin the webinar, these 3 key tips that we're talking about in bulleted form are: you want to make sure you visit every booth. You want to make sure you prepare your resume and think about your 30-second elevator pitch to client or to companies hiring, You want to make sure you've translated your military experience into civilian language. We'll expound on each of these things as we go through the webinar. You also want to make sure you research beforehand. This is critically important because there will be a lot of companies who will have jobs that you might not think would be part of that company. And then you want to make sure you follow up afterward. It makes an incredible difference when you contact those you've talked to, since they do talk to so many people at job fairs. And that can make the difference between an interview and not. Also, honorable mention today is you want to make sure to dress and act professionally and confidently. If you employ these tactics, we think that you will have a much higher rate of success at our job fairs. And on that note, I'm going to hand over the reins to Mike Frankham to begin presenting in detail these tactics of 3 key tips to use career fairs to find your next job. Mike?
Thanks, Liz, and hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As Liz mentioned, we've boiled down some key tips that we've found that if folks really follow and put to use in a career fair format, just not at a RecruitMilitary career fair, but any career fair, can also oftentimes lead to success. Now, one thing I want to quickly point out about what is success at a career fair and setting your expectations the right way at a career fair. One is, don't go into any career fair expecting to walk out of there with a job. That can oftentimes lead to setting yourself up for the wrong expectation. Think of a career fair as an opportunity to go learn about and become knowledgeable about companies and careers in your area that are of particular interest to you or could be of particular interest to you. It can also be a key networking opportunity. For instance, tomorrow in Chicago, we're holding a career fair with about 75 companies. It's going to be hard for you as a job seeker to find a more efficient way to go talk to hiring and recruiting leaders in companies than you can in 4 hours of time in Chicago tomorrow, just as an example, where 75 companies are going to be. And in Charlotte tomorrow, we'll have 50 companies. And so what the first thing we talk about here as a key tip is to visit every booth. And this is really almost the most important tactic you can employ because it oftentimes leads to employment in a surprise fashion. And there's something that I refer to as career fair magic that often happens. And what that magic is that recruiters might go looking for or go to an event looking for a specific position and really targeting a specific type of individual, but in conversation with someone that they really didn't expect to meet or find at that career fair, they actually know about another position that the company is trying to hire for, and they then begin to think of you potentially as a candidate for that other position because of who you are as an individual and the unique experiences that you bring to the table or the unique personality that you might bring with you. So that is really why we encourage you to go visit every booth, is that you're going to be able to find those hidden jobs that are going to be out there in virtually almost every company. It's rare to not have these types of positions within companies, especially if they're at a career fair. That generally means that they're a growing company, that they have needs, and that their needs are usually wider than what they specifically come to an event for. Important for you in prepping for this and being ready to visit every booth is to know what you're looking for and know where your skills lie, where your interests lie, but also to keep an open mind. And really encourage you that as you talk with companies that you be specific and avoid saying to a recruiter at a table, I can or will do anything. That really doesn't help the recruiter in trying to figure out who you are as an individual. One thing to keep in mind as you're approaching recruiters is that they're probably going to talk to a couple hundred people just that day at an event. And they're not going to be able to remember every single person, but they will remember the memorable person. How do you make yourself memorable? By knowing who it is you are and what it is that you want and being able to nail that in your introduction to that recruiter. So practice applying your experience, as Liz points out here in this bullet. You want to practice applying your experience to anything so that you don't have to say, I'll do anything. And so what that means is, as you learn what a company is looking for in conversation, you'll be able to apply your experiences and what you want to whatever that company might be looking for. We encourage you, as you visit every booth, to keep an open mind. Kroger might be hiring accountants. A defense contractor might be hiring a chef. Or educational institutions, you may not have a desire to go back to school. You may not have that need. Maybe you already have a master's degree. But that educational institution may be hiring admissions counselors or military relations specialists or even adjunct professors. We've had those types of connections made at our career fairs, and it happens virtually at every event. And we get a lot of feedback from veterans who attend our events. And one of the things that I'd love to see and hear is when veterans take this advice, visit every booth, and then send an email to us and let us know, hey, that really worked. I was able to find those hidden jobs that you talked about, and now have joined a great company where I really feel at home. So that's why this is important to go visit every booth. Liz, if you can go to the next slide. And important in being ready to go talk to every or visit every booth is to make sure that you take the time to prepare your resume. Translate your military skills to civilian language. And as you do that, remember that your MOS doesn't mean much to civilian recruiters, most of them anyway. And even if it's a military person like myself, and when I've been out in the field for RecruitMilitary, specifically recruiting in the past, I'm an Army veteran. I don't know all of the Navy rates. So when a Navy veteran would talk about their rate in the Navy, first off, when I first got into this business, I didn't even know what a rate was. So I was in the military, but I don't know the lingo and the language of every service. Now, after 17 years, I've learned a lot and can probably be conversant in just about every branch of the service. However, that's not going to be the norm that you're going to face with recruiters that are out there. So even with those that might be veterans, find a way to not really talk about your MOS, but talk about what you did on a daily basis and what you accomplished. That's more important to the recruiters and to those that you're going to be speaking with. They want to know what you did and what you accomplished. In general, your resume should be no more than 2 pages. Bullets work best. Don't use paragraphs in your resume. Think about recruiters when they get back to their office. They met 100 people at the career fair that they maybe went to, and they took back home 75 resumes. They're going to give that resume about a 10-second look if they didn't make specific notes on your resume when they get back to your office. So you need to make it really easy for people to read and scan, and make sure that you spell out those different accomplishments and achievements, both from the military and if you had civilian jobs, post-military or pre-military. What were your accomplishments that you had in those positions? And quantify and qualify those things that you accomplished. And what I mean by that, it's more impactful to have a bullet on a resume that says something like, through an efficiency project, was able to reduce costs in the shipping department by 12%. So that is very specific, talked about what you did and the results that you achieved by completing that task. So those kind of specifics, if you have them, are much better to have on your resume. One thing to keep in mind is that at career fairs, and some of you have likely have experienced this, and it can sometimes lead to frustration, is that not all companies are going to accept paper resumes. And so they're going to ask you to go online. It's not personal, and they're not trying to just shove you off when they ask you to do that. Many of these companies have legal requirements that they're obligated to follow in their recruitment process in order to stay compliant with federal employment regulations. So they need to be fair in their hiring practices, and that means that their system that they've set up cannot have bias to it. So it starts the same for everyone, and that process will be online. And so don't grow frustrated by that. Spend the time to learn what it is that the company is looking for, so that when you go do that online process, you can actually tailor your entries to what you learned from the person there at the event they're actually looking for. Because what's also happening in those online systems is it's a machine that's reading your input, and you want the machine to send you automatically to a human being, and the way that you accomplish that is by making sure that the words that you're inputting into the system are matching up what they're looking for, and the recruiter is going to give you that information when you speak to them. So some things to think about as you're prepping your resume and then making those inputs online. Liz, if you could go to the next slide, please. And then tied to your elevator is, or excuse me, tied to your resume is your elevator pitch. And there's 4 parts of an elevator pitch. And think of an elevator pitch as your introduction to someone in being able to convey what it is that you've done and what it is that you want to do and what it is that you can do potentially for the company, and doing that in a 20 to 30-second introduction, equivalent of a ride up an elevator. That's where the term elevator pitch comes from. And we actually have a previous seminar or webinar that we did on the elevator pitch. And Liz, if you'll remember, maybe make a note of that on a follow-up email or something that we could include that so you could get that information of the elevator pitch. But in an elevator pitch, you have 4 basic parts. Introduce yourself personally, provide a brief history of your experience, apply your experience to potential positions in the company, and then request an interview or next step from the employer. You don't want to try to pack all your experience into 30 seconds. Remember, the goal here is to spark interest into further conversations. And make sure you use active verbs such as the I led, or I carried out, I managed, I developed. Whatever it might be, make sure that you're using those action verbs within your elevator pitch. Liz, do you have anything that you've seen from your perspective, not being a military person, your background being military, on how that elevator pitch can really help you understand what that military background can mean when someone's introducing themselves? Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I think something really important to keep in mind in your elevator pitch, particularly when you're talking to non-military recruiters, is the active verb bullets that we have on this slide. Introducing your skills or explaining your experience in an active way, such as, I was responsible for this many people, or I led a team that did this, that translates your military experience to a recruiter. So someone like me who hasn't served in the military can get a picture of what you did and understand how that will apply to a position in a civilian company. So just your phrasing of what you did is a critically important part of this. And I think also, as it says in the first bullet, don't try to pack all of your experience into 30 seconds. You're not going to be able to pack years and years of military service or even military plus civilian into a small pitch. What you want to do is just put 2 or 3 bullets that would spark the interest of the recruiter to have that longer conversation. And that's why you want to research beforehand, so you know what kind of positions they might be interested in, and you can pick the 2 or 3 most important, relevant things that you've done to illustrate to them that you would be potentially a fit for their position. But from a civilian perspective, the most important thing thing, I think, is to use those active verbs to explain what you did and translate your military experience to the civilian language.
Thanks, Liz. And if you could take us to our final main tip that we have, and that's to do what you can to prepare beforehand and then make sure you have good follow-up after the event. So as you are preparing to go to a career fair, most companies or organizations that hold career fairs, somewhere on the website that is oriented toward that specific event, you should be able to find a list of companies that are going to be attending the job fair. And I encourage you to research those companies, find out what open jobs are in those companies, and then think about which are the top 10 that you maybe want to talk to, and go deeper in understanding more about those companies. Spend some time on their website, look at their culture, what they're talking about, and that way you can have a more meaningful conversation and ask better questions of the recruiter that's going to be at the event. Thus, you're maximizing your time and the time of the recruiter at the event because you're going to be more prepared. And also, by taking a look at the list of companies, what you're going to do is be able to understand those that, again, you want to have be your primary companies, and don't make those the first companies you go speak with. And go get the butterflies out by talking to 5 or 6 companies that you think might be second tier for you personally, because it doesn't seem like they match up well with you, but use them to go practice your elevator pitch and to go practice answering some questions, so that then as you approach those next 10 that are your top tier, you've warmed up a little bit, kind of like if you're in a baseball game or a basketball player, you know, you either throw or you shoot a little bit before each of those games to warm yourself up. Same concept here. Go warm yourself up with companies that maybe aren't at the top of your list. And, by the way, you may just get surprised by what you find in doing that, because you're forcing yourself to talk to more companies that way. Find a way to get familiar with how a job fair works. You know, walk through or into the venue and find out how the booths are set up. See how recruiters are talking to candidates, get a lay of the land, and then how you are going to personally work your way through that venue. Print, if possible, resumes tailored to specific jobs or industries. This can sound like a lot of work, but if you take those, let's say your top 10 companies, and they're top 10 because each of them, let's say you're a candidate that's looking for a sales position, then have a version of your resume that will stand out for sales type positions, and give that resume to those companies that are recruiting for sales positions. And maybe, because most in the military have some sort of operational or leadership capability and experience as well, have perhaps a second resume that's more operational or leadership oriented and is more about your organizational skills or your management skills, so it's different than the sales resume, and have that resume available for the companies that have opportunities that are perhaps more operational in nature, so that you can have a different resume. One or two, having a couple of versions with you is a very positive thing to do in preparation for an event. And then to help with the follow-up after a career fair, make sure you get information on the best way to follow up after the event. Some employers will hand you their business cards. Some will just give it to you verbally, and you need to have a notebook along with you so you can take notes. And make sure that you either follow up via email or LinkedIn request to link with them after the event to express the interest that you may have, and also thanking them for the time that they spent with you at the career fair. And then if you had a real compelling conversation at a career fair, and this is for the follow-on interview process as well, if you really want to get a job and you want to stand out from just the slew of candidates that most companies probably have, take the time to send a handwritten note, especially for those jobs that are of great interest to you. Not a lot of people do that anymore, and when you actually take the time to do that, you do stand out from the crowd. Now, a few things on that. Make sure that you have good handwriting, that the person can read it, good grammar, good spelling, those kind of things. And also, on your email notes and your follow-up, make sure that you're not using abbreviated text-type language in your thank you. It should be a professionally written letter, even by email, and not filled with acronyms that you might use in texting with your friends and things like that. So just make sure that you're professional in that. And Liz, our final slide with just to recap with the tactics that we think lead to success and have gotten people great results are to make sure that you visit every booth, take the time to prep your resume, think about your 30-second elevator pitch and how to translate that military experience into civilian language. Do the research before the event if possible, and follow up afterward in a professional and timely way. And one more note on the follow-up. Ask the clients, or the companies, how they would prefer your follow-up. And if they say, please give me a call tomorrow, actually do that, because it's amazing the feedback we get from companies when they tell us that individuals that they met at the career fair didn't do the follow-up that they specifically asked them to do, and maybe they got to it 3 days later. That's not a good thing, a good sign to give to a company of your interest. Make sure you do what they ask you to do, and again, that sets you apart from a lot of people that are out there looking for jobs. And then lastly, our honorable mention, dress and act professionally and confidently. Don't go to a career fair in blue jeans and a T-shirt with skull and crossbones on it. Don't wear a baseball hat at a career fair. At a minimum, be in business casual, which is a pair of khakis and a polo shirt. If you are very interested in professional management level positions, then dress the part. Put a suit on and look good. You know, one of the things that people like about military folks is that they generally don't have to tell them the basics. This is one of those basics sometimes that people miss. So just make sure you're representing yourself as well as you can and as professionally as you can, just in how you look. And then as you approach people at career fairs, put a smile on your face. People like to talk to people who are pleasant and appear pleasant. Have a good handshake, firm handshake, not a vice grip, and have good eye contact when you're talking with people. Don't be looking at your shoes. Don't be looking over the head of the person. Have good eye contact as you're asking questions and answering questions. And all of that goes a long way in really making you appear to be a professional and confident candidate, and someone that the person you're talking to they could see you representing their company well. Liz, back to you.
Thanks, Mike. Before we move on to our job spotlight feature, I do want to mention, because we've had several of these questions asked throughout the webinar, we will have these slides and this presentation available for you afterward. We'll send it in our follow-up email. It will also be available on our YouTube channel, and we'll reach out to our Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, all of our social networks. So all of this information will be available to you again once we've ended this presentation. But now we're going to move on to our new Job Spotlight feature. I would like to introduce to you today Bill Edmondson from First Command Financial Services. Bill is an accomplished recruiting professional with nearly 20 years of experience in talent acquisition. He grew up in a military family on military bases throughout the United States and Europe before enlisting in the Army himself after high school. After serving 3 years in the United States Army, he transitioned out as a specialist, where he launched a successful career as a corporate recruiter. Bill, we're so glad to have you today.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. And for those of you listening, thanks for your service. I want to commend Mike and Liz. That information they provided is spot on, and as somebody who spends a lot of time at these events, heed what they tell you, because that is sound advice. It's amazing to me what I see sometimes at these events, and if you follow these guidelines, people will pay attention to you. You will stand out, and you'll get folks interested in you. First, let me tell you guys a little bit about First Command. I know most of you probably have not heard of us. I think we're one of the best kept secrets, and I'm trying my best to get the secret out, if you will. But First Command is a company that was founded by a veteran, a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel, with a specific mission to help the men and women of our military and their families achieve financial security. He, in his career, had served as a casualty officer and spent times with families who had lost loved ones, and he realized that they weren't prepared. They didn't understand what was going on, and not only did they lose their husband and their loved one, but they lost their breadwinner, and they just didn't know what they were going to do financially. So the company was founded and focused for more than 50 years exclusively on hiring, or taking care of and hiring folks out of the military. And it's created quite a culture for us. So one that I think, as someone who served in the military, is very, very comfortable. If you enjoy your time in the military, we certainly have a culture that feels very, very much like being in the military. But to give you a little bit an idea of what we do, our financial advisors, what separates us from a lot of the other folks out there in the business is our advisors build and cultivate face-to-face relationships with their clients. They meet them in their local communities. We have offices throughout the country, throughout the world, where we sit down outside of the base at Fort Polk or Fort Hood or Fort Bliss, and you come in and you sit down and you talk with your advisor about what's going on in your world, and we work with them to find out what's important to them and help them achieve their financial goals through financial planning. Your mission, your day-to-day life in the military has enough on your plate without you having to worry about some of these things that you can get some help from a financial advisor to help with. We're hiring currently all across the country. There are 5 people like me at First Command, and we each have a different division, so I'm going to focus a little bit on me and what I'm looking for. My focus right now, I'm actually in El Paso today at Fort Bliss. So Fort Bliss, Fort Hood, and San Antonio are big markets for us right now, where we have a need to add to the advisor force to take care of the men and women there. So those are kind of my focuses. But we also have a corporate headquarters in Fort Worth. Fort Worth is where the company was founded and launched, and that's our corporate spot. So if you're an IT person or looking for a more traditional corporate type job, HR or something like that, that's generally speaking where those positions for us would be. And our field offices are focused on hiring advisors. They're going to work with the men and women in uniform to get themselves squared away. Let me tell you a little bit about what we look for in an advisor. It's a simple formula, but it's definitely unique. One, we love a successful military career, and that can be defined in a lot of different ways, but generally speaking, we're looking for leaders. We want people who stood out amongst their peers and achieved some stuff while they were in the military. We like to have a bachelor's degree. It's not a 100% requirement, but it is certainly something that we look for in most of our locations. A little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. This job is different than military service in the sense that in the military, everybody's kind of funneled into certain categories. You know, certain ranks, certain time in service gets paid a certain amount of money, and you're kind of you're limited by certain things there. Where ours is a little bit more entrepreneurial. We're looking for that person that wants to stretch their wings a little bit and take a little bit more risk, perhaps, and maybe a little bit more reward to come with that. That outgoing personality, somebody who's socially involved in their community. They belong to different clubs, groups, associations. They have hobbies that take them out and get them interacting with people. You know, we've got folks that are in shooting clubs, or maybe they're in a motorcycle riding club or a CrossFit gym or something where they're social. Because a lot of what we do is interact with our communities to let them know who we are and what we do, and that's how we grow our business, basically. So your hobbies and your interaction in the community is certainly a benefit that we look for. That's basically what we look for in an advisor. We can teach everything else. A successful military career, a lot of people think that I do this, this, and this. How does that translate to the civilian world? For us, the main things we like are the work ethic, the integrity, the leadership skills, the teamwork mindset. Those kind of skills translate really nicely into us. Teaching you a little bit about financial planning and mutual funds and life insurance and those kind of things. We know we can teach you that stuff. The Army has already, or whatever branch you're in, has already demonstrated that you have an ability to be coached and trained yourself. So we can kind of use that to be able to teach you some new skills. If you're interested in a position with us, I think Mike had mentioned this earlier, I'm one of those guys that would ask you to go online and apply. We have a website. It's really easy to remember. It's written here on this slide. It's wehireleaders.com. If you go there and click the Apply Here button, you'll come up to a screen where you can search and upload your resume into a location where you're going. I'll reemphasize, Fort Bliss, Fort Hood, and San Antonio are certainly key markets for me right now, so any of you from those areas, I'd be most interested in talking with you. In addition to uploading your resume on our website, we do have a questionnaire that comes with it, and this is something that I think would kind of feed back into what Mike was saying. When you're doing that not only with us or if you're doing it with other companies, these questionnaires are often read by the first-level screeners who are going to evaluate you in the process. So please take your time and answer the questions that are being asked in the best way possible. And again, pay attention to grammar. Pay attention to your spelling, your use of capitalization, because it's all creating an image for you. And if you don't treat that stuff on the front end with some sense of importance, you're probably not going to make it very far into the process. So I know it can be a little time consuming, but if it's the right fit for you, a little bit of work and effort on the front end is going to pay off. What will happen on our end is a recruiter will review your information, your resume, the evaluation that you filled out, the questions, and then they'll notify you one way or the other whether you're going to be selected for an interview or not. Let me close with benefits of a career at First Command in an advisor role. I often run into people that this was the last thing on their radar. They're a tank commander or they're a field artillery guy or an aviator, and they're like, what am I going to do in a financial planning world, and why should I want to? For me, I think it comes down to a few things. You got to know what you want to do in life, and if you can find a career where you have a sense of purpose, where you're truly in service to other people and making an impact in others' lives, I think that you will find yourself jumping out of bed in the morning, getting ready to go to work. You'll have fun. And that's one of the things this offers you. The sense of purpose in the work, living a life of significance in service of others is certainly a benefit of this opportunity. In addition, we also offer a great work-life balance. I know in military service, you don't have a lot of control over your day-to-day, and you go where they tell you to go, and you stay as long as they tell you to stay, and your family a lot of times suffers at that. And First Command is really understanding of that. Most of our guys, about 70% of our advisor force has actually been in uniform, so they've lived that life, and they understand the importance of if you've got a doctor's appointment or if you've got a soccer team that you're coaching and you need to leave early on a Wednesday, we want you to be able to do that. We're going to trust you to understand and run your operation around the personal things. Don't miss any more birthdays if you can help it. Don't miss your anniversary if you can help it. This great work-life balance is another opportunity that you have with a career at First Command. And lastly, and I don't want to glaze over it, but our mission is about creating abundant lives for people, but it's also for creating abundant lives for our people. If you were to go out and Google and research being a financial advisor, I think you'd find that it's one of the fastest growing careers out there, and the income from it is pretty nice too. It is a field that you get into it what you put out of it, so there are those that earn great livings, and then there are some people who do a little bit more modest returns. But the opportunity is certainly there, and if you've got the work ethic and the drive, it could be a great opportunity for you. Lastly, if you want to email me directly, my info is not on this slide, but you can email me. My email address is Whiskey Romeo Echo Delta Mike Uniform November Delta Sierra Oscar November. It's W.R. Edmondson at firstcommand.com. And I'd be glad to hear from any of you. If you have any questions or you want to have a more in-depth discussion about First Command and the opportunities, just send me a note and we'll schedule some time to talk. And back to you, Liz.
Thank you so much, Bill, for that great information. And I want to remind those of you listening that this information will be available on our YouTube channel. We'll include Bill's direct email address in our follow-up email in case you want to get in touch with him there. And on that note, we will move to the question and answer feature. In order for you to ask a question, go to the right-hand side of the page, expand that GoToWebinar toolbar by using the orange arrow, go down to the question or chat box, and go ahead and ask us any question you like. You can ask Mike and myself as well as Bill, and we'll go ahead and start answering those. I'm going to start this out. This first question we got a few minutes ago, and I answered it privately, but I want to answer it publicly as well so that the rest of you can hear this. The question is from Tim, and he asks, I see on the RecruitMilitary website a list of exhibitors for a job fair. How do we know which specific positions they are looking for at the event? And Tim, this is a great question, especially based off of what we talked about researching beforehand the positions that companies might have available. Sometimes there will be a hyperlink on the company name in the exhibitor list on our website for each of the specific events. You'll be able to click on that to find a job list there. And other times there's not a list provided on our website, and in that case you can go directly to the website of the company and look to be able to best research what types of opportunities they have. But it's a good question on how to find out what kind of opportunities, and a good way to research. Even if you can't find the specific jobs, getting more familiar with what each company does will give you an idea about how to communicate with them. Mike, did you have anything to add to that question?
No, the comment about the website is good, and use that as an opportunity. I know it can sound like a lot of work, but use that as an opportunity to go visit that company website. And here's another tip for you. If it's a very large company that you know does work with the federal government, I guarantee you that you're going to have to apply online. Go ahead and apply to the job pre-career fair, and then when you apply for a position in most of the online systems, you are going to receive some sort of thank you page, or thank you for taking the time to apply to the project manager position in Dubuque, Iowa. And if that's the position that you applied for and you're very interested, print that screen off, take it with you to the event, attach it with a paper clip or a staple to the resume that you're going to hand to that particular company. And now when the recruiter says, make sure you apply online, you can say, I've already done that, here's my resume. You're now already in the system. And again, this is going to be dependent on kind of the policies of the company, but many recruiters now, because you are electronically in the system, they will engage you at that career fair differently than if you hadn't applied online yet. So you can preempt things and maybe get a different level conversation because you already applied prior to the event. So that's another reason to go do that and to actually visit company websites prior to the event. Now, if you're unclear what that company is really looking for, I maybe wouldn't apply yet, and I'd try to use the event to learn more so that I can make sure that I'm using all the right phrases and keywords to get through the electronic system that you're going to have to apply to. But if you're very confident and you're going to input information that is accurate and matches the needs of the company, then go ahead and do that pre-event, and you could be really making yourself stand out as a motivated potential employee for that company to seriously consider.
The next question is from, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to add to that. I think, Mike referred to this earlier as if you show up and you know, if the recruiter sees that you spent some time doing some homework and some research, that's going to put you in the category that stands out from other people. I was sitting here just thinking while he was talking about, what I really don't like at a career fair is when someone walks up to me and just blurts out, "So what do y'all do?" I don't mind if you don't know what I do, but there's a better way to ask it than just asking me what I do. You have to be cognizant of that. But if it is a company that you're interested in, that you like, that something about the culture and the values, demonstrate that you've done a little homework. Even if you don't know exactly what job might be right, say something like, "Hey, I've researched your company a little bit. I'm not sure where I might fit in, but what I see about the culture and the values really seems to fit with me. Could you tell me more about what kind of opportunities might be there?" If you ask it that way instead of just coming up saying, "So what do y'all do?" You'll definitely make a better impression.
That's a great point, Bill. Our next question is from Daniel. He asks, "Is it good practice to hand in a cover letter with my resume at a career fair?" Mike, do you
Bill,
want to
do
field
you
that
want
one?
to add? I was going to actually ask Bill if you'd be interested in, giving your perspective as an active recruiter on, your value in that.
Give me the question one more time.
Daniel wants to know if it's good practice to hand in a cover letter with his resume to recruiters at a career fair.
Yes, particularly if it's written to that company. So if you go back to Mike's 10 companies that you kind of ID as your top 10 that you want to definitely make a good impression on, a cover letter will stand out. In this age of text messages and email, it's a lost art, but it's one of those things that takes it a long way. It gives you an opportunity to, if you look, recruiters a lot of times at these career fairs are trying to jot down notes and things on the back of your resume to remember who you are. A well-written cover letter will help you stand out and help the recruiter remember who you are as well. So I'd highly encourage it. Don't make it too lengthy. Recruiters are pressed for time, so they don't get a lot of time, but a couple of short paragraphs, maybe limit it to that, and you should be able to do fine.
And I'll just add to that by saying cover letters can be challenging to write, but good practice for that is to follow those same bullet points for an elevator pitch and just introduce yourself personally, talk a little bit about what your experience is, how you might apply that experience to the potential company, and then ask for a further conversation or an interview. And sticking to that, you just want to spark a further conversation. It's not a long-form version of your resume. It's just a very short pitch to familiarize the recruiter with who you are. Our next question is from John, and he asks, "Should I go to all career fairs that I can find?"
Liz, I'll take that one, and John, I would encourage you to go to any career fair you can find. One of the things to think about when you're searching for a job, and this doesn't matter if you're transitioning from the military or someone like myself that's been out of the military for a long time now, and that is that searching for a job is not a natural thing for anyone to do. And in order to get better at anything that is unnatural, the only way to get better at it is to actually go do it. And so that, just for the practice alone, I encourage you to go do it. And then the other thing is, when you do get an interview, whether a follow-up interview, whether it's through a career fair or a normal application process or a referral that you might get from friends and family, you want to be ready to answer questions and to just shine in an interview. And again, think of all of the interactions you can get at career fairs as really practice sessions for when it really matters, which is in the interview process after events. And you just can't lose by going to have those types of interactions. And that's part of what I mentioned at the beginning about having the right expectations about a career fair. And career fairs should just be one, one arrow in your, arsenal that you're using to find a career. And you should be, firing all those different pieces that you have to find a job. And so practice. Think of all the practice that you did in whatever your military career might be, and all the time that you put into getting good at something. You have to do the same thing when it comes to finding a career. So we encourage you to go to every career fair that you possibly can, because it only broadens your network. And that's my last point of going to every career fair you can, is when you're looking for a job, you just don't know who that person is that's going to help you be connected to your next career. That's a key element of success that oftentimes I've seen veterans struggle with a little bit, and that is the element of a network and how important that can be. So career fairs can really help you broaden that network, both with employers and with fellow veterans. So talk with fellow veterans while you're standing in line at career fairs. Exchange phone numbers so that you can text each other about opportunities that you learn about. Jot a note or two about each person you meet and what they're looking for, because I guarantee you, if you start sending people job leads that aren't right for you, but they're potentially right for people that you met at a career fair, I guarantee you that you'll start getting people sending you positions that aren't right for them, but they thought of you because you took the time to think of them. That is so big, and so many people miss that part of a career search.
That's great information, Mike. And our last question today is from Mark, and he asks, when asked, tell me about yourself by a recruiter, where should one start in their life's journey?
I'll take it.
Mike, do you want to that one?
For me, what I like to hear from somebody on that tell me about yourself is, I like to start with a little bit of the current situation. I don't need a full history, but I also like it to include both a little bit of the professional and the personal side, a little bit about hobbies, a little bit about things you might enjoy doing. So for me, it's kind of a snapshot of your current situation, and maybe a little bit about what you're looking for, what you think you want to do next.
That's perfect, and that's what I would add too. Just anything that would be relevant to the future position. It's not an autobiography that you want to present, but anything that you feel would add to your skills at the potential job. That's the stuff that you want to include talking about.
And as a quick guideline, think of it. This is a question that you should prepare for and have somewhat practice, and time yourself and try to keep this at about no more than a 2, maybe 3-minute answer for when you're actually sitting down for an interview. But probably at a career fair, I'd have a version that's between 60 and 90 seconds, and maybe for your sit-down interviews, a version that's maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and that'll help also frame to make sure you capture the important points. So that would just be a structural thing that I'd recommend.
Yeah, and to bookend that, practice it. You want to appear confident when you're at these things, so you want to have something that you're comfortable saying and you're familiar saying. Practice it with a friend or a family member going into it, so you kind of get some of the butterflies out of the way.
And this quick question is from Kyle. I think this is a great question to add. He asks, I've read that a 3-page resume is acceptable for candidates with 19-plus years of experience who are seeking senior professional positions. Is that true?
I'll just give my perspective and what I've seen in working with companies for 17 years now. And, I mean, unless you're going into a type of position where it's more of a what people refer to as a CV, curricula vitae, I still would recommend that you go with 2 pages. And a few things to think about there. The people that are going to read your resume are too crunched for time. They just don't have time and that also you want to be able to portray an image that you can get your point across efficiently and succinctly. And if you can't get your background in 2 pages, then me as an evaluator, I'm beginning to think that you're not going to be able to get your point across. And if you're trying to be in business, things are getting tighter and more compressed, not longer and more stretched out. So you need to really be able to display that you have an ability to transition to the world in which you're entering, not maybe a world in which you're coming from. So I'd really encourage you to work on getting it at 2 pages, and in most employers' eyes, your last 10 years are the most relevant years anyway, so things before that aren't as relevant, and they're not going to be as interested in digging in and seeing great detail in things that are greater than 10 years in the past anyway.
Yeah, those are great points, Mike. And to add to that, it's not bad to have a longer, more detailed resume for the right audience. So you got to remember that people that are reviewing resumes a lot of times on the front end, entry-level HR generalists or entry-level recruiting professionals, they don't understand half of what you're putting in there. So for them, they're looking for keywords and they're looking for accomplishments. So to go back to Mike's resume tips, I mean, you write a resume, each job you want to put on there, you don't want to write out a paragraph of what you did with a lot of funky acronyms and things like that in there. You want to have a couple bullet points of your 2 or 3 greatest accomplishments that you had during that position, then move on to the next position. So you give somebody that's reading it a quick look at, oh, this guy's really getting stuff done. But then when you get to the final stages and maybe you're sitting there and you're doing a panel interview, you could tell folks, hey, I know I've got a more detailed bio if you're interested in more in-depth look at what I did at this position or that position. I've got this with me. But you hand that detailed bio off to an entry-level person, their eyes are going to roll back in their head and they're going to go on to the stuff that doesn't require them to dig in as deeply, and it's just human nature.
And that's going to go ahead and wrap up our question and answer session today. Thank you all for joining us for 3 key tips to use career fairs to find your next job. This presentation and the entire webinar will be available on our YouTube channel either today or tomorrow. And you'll be able to access it through our social network, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We'll also send you the information in a follow-up email that will go out later today. Be sure to visit us at our website at www.recruitmilitary.com. You'll be able to find a lot of great job-seeking resources there. You can also find a schedule of our job fairs at events.recruitmilitary.com. We are hosting 101 job fairs in all major cities around the country, so you can find the one nearest you on that page. If you have any questions, feel free to email us after the webinar. We'd love to hear your comments and your questions and any suggestions for topics for future webinars. And again, we thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Liz.